The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I listened to the debate today, it has echoes a bit of what we were hearing in the antitrust subcommittee hearing, I guess it was yesterday, in which a point that was made, and it's been made before, the Affordable Care Act forced, essentially it was federal policy adopted by Congress, forced consolidation in the medical space among health insurance carriers. That led to anticipated consolidation among hospitals, physician groups, but then that became an enforcement priority of FTC, seen as anti-competitive, and so they've been after the hospitals as antagonists to this consolidation, which federal policy passed by Congress pushed. And what I'm hearing in Mr. Massey's comments, particularly Mr. Isis, others, is that the patent law, people say, well, the patent office has granted it, and now we're going to have the FTC taking an opposite posture. It's worse than that. Congress establishes when patents are grantable. Congress says, we're going to grant you a legal monopoly. You have the right to control the field entirely in the commerce in that product. And so if the law is set such that creating a new formulation, a new aspect of the drug, or new whatever, take it one time a day versus 2 times, if the patent the law is such that the patent can be conferred, the legal monopoly, and now we're going to put it in the hands of another federal agency to say the doing of that which the law has granted you to exploit the monopoly in some way that you don't like is now anti-competitive.
Would the gentleman yield?
I will, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'm struck by your example of hospital consolidation because it has had exactly that effect, and probably it's something we ought to deal with. The consolidation of hospitals has led to a gross lowering of wages because people have fewer potential employers, so the law of supply and demand operates, and it has led to a gross increase in medical costs for the same reason, exactly as Adam Smith predicted.
Mr. Chairman, I take your point. I'm not a fan of hospital consolidation. The point is this Congress passed Obamacare, which led to the consolidation, and then further undertakes to attack the consolidation of the hospitals that it itself created.
Well, I don't know that Obamacare led to it.
Well,
we should correct it in any event.
I don't mean to debate the point here. It's been published. Advocates for it said so.
You and I are in agreement. We should correct it in any event.
Yes, sir, I agree. But the way we correct it is not by compounding these conflicting policies that are all bred by federal policy. Fix the patent law if it's granting monopolies in a place where it shouldn't. And here's the worst part of all, and this is what this amendment does. I've still got 2 minutes. I'd submit, Mr. Cicilline, that the reason we're seeing amendments about the language when a soft hop might be okay is because the language of the statute is not entirely perfectly clear. And what you anticipate, or what I think the advocates of the bill anticipate, is that you're just going to grant a lot of power to the administrative agency. I think it's more or less arbitrary power to make its own law. So this amendment, if the bill is good as it is, if the language really is decipherable and intelligible as it is, then let it govern in the bill that you've got before you. This amendment, though, would take away the provision that grants new rulemaking authority to the FTC. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution gives lawmaking authority to Congress, not federal agencies. That means Congress has the ability and the obligation to develop legislation. You don't confer the power on the FTC and just assume that everything's going to be all right. I think that's what's particularly problematic, is we not only have this policy conflict that irreconcilable acts of Congress would create, but I believe the real purpose of that is to hand all this administrative power and create uncertainty in the marketplace, because you believe that's the way, the heavy hand of government and riding herd on pharmaceutical companies is the way to solve the problem. I submit, if you're confident in that, let the legislation that you're passing speak for itself. Let's take out the provision that will now allow the FTC to make its law, to decide to enforce its law, and through its administrative law judges decide the law, and through appeals to the FTC commissioners. So I think that's a pretty good summation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.